much, Carly. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all here. And as I mentioned earlier, I hope you're comfortable and relaxed and ready to enjoy yourself. Today's session is simple practices for a joyful retirement. Now, on your program, it says simple habits, and they're simple habits for a joyful retirement. But I last minute kind of changed it just because I think practices sounds a little less intense than habits, these habits that we need to establish. All right, so this was my first day of school in 2016. So I retired in 2016, and today's presentation will largely be anecdotal. There are lots of great presentations and books on reinventing yourself, right? Some people call it the second act or the second chapter in your life, or things like that. I did end up kind of reinventing myself, but I'm just going to take you through my story since this day in 2016. Now, summer is summer. We all enjoy summer, right? And so I had this regular kind of summer that I really enjoyed, but there was something special about going to the mountains in September, climbing. This is Devil's Thumb here. And with my son, he had university starting like on the 8th. And so the first week of September, I'm thinking about all my colleagues back in the classroom, and I'm here in Lake Louise, and I'm just like, oh, this is so great. I just loved it. And Devil's Thumb isn't that tough. It looks like this fantastic climb, but it's not that tough. The Beehive is just to the left there, and that's Lake Edith, and there's a really great path up to Lake Edith. And then if you just go a little further from Lake Edith, you can get to Devil's Thumb, which you can see obviously very clearly from the Lake Louise ski resort across the valley. See, that's all those trails of ski runs. And then of course Lake Louise and Chateau Lake Louise. Anyway, this is what you can look forward to. Like this was my dream, and I did it, right? But you don't have to climb Devil's Thumb, but you can do anything you want, and plan on doing something fun in September, okay? Because September, it's just that magical time when the crowds of the tourists kind of diminish a little bit, and in your mind that you're retired and everybody's back in school. All right. So what are your concerns? I don't want you to tell me. I just want you to think about it. And I'll share with you my concerns. Like I say, this is kind of an anecdotal presentation about my own experience. And so when do I retire? Wow. Like how long do I wait? A quick little story about this. I decided, okay, 2016, June, I was 56. I just turned 56. I was 55 at the beginning of June and 56 by the end of June. Anyway, and that's pretty early. Like most of my friends are still working full time. And so I decided that would be the time. And you know what? A month before, in May, I'm like, I want to retire when I'm 55, and I've had it. I just want to retire. Anyway, I said to my wife, I'm going to retire a month early. She's like, what are you talking about? I looked it up, and if you retire a month earlier than the end of the school, your pension is cut dramatically. For me, it felt like a year's worth of pension that I would give up if I retired a month early. So when should you retire? I think you're all thinking about this. You probably wouldn't be at this session. If there's anybody who's 15 years away, that is fine, because I started planning 15 years away, and I think that's a good time to plan. Money, money, money. I have talked to so many people, and you know what? You look up retirement. Money is the number one concern. Do I have enough money? Will my pension be enough? Do I have enough savings? I'm going to talk about these first two. I'm also going to talk about retirement goals. What is it that you want to do when you retire? I'm going to talk about my other concern. Will I will I be happy? Because, I didn't hate my job. I love teaching, but um, I'm a restless soul. I just really enjoy new things and new adventures and new challenges. And so my thought was to kind of reinvent myself to go on to a different occupation. So these four concerns I'm going to address, and I mentioned habits or practices. Oh, just a minute. I'll talk about the practices in a minute. You have tremendous resources, fabulous, fantastic resources. I mean, one of these very well, ASEPB, right? Or BP, sorry, ASEBP. And ASEBP is fabulous. It is something that can continue into your retirement. Uh, I I know many are concerned about healthcare, and guess what? You don't need to be concerned. Now, ASEBP is not available when you're 65 and older. I know some of you are thinking that, well, that's not available. Well, it is. It is available up till 65, age 65, and then ARTA takes over. All right, so you get connected with ARTA, the Alberta Retired Teachers Association, and ARTA connects you to a Blue Cross program that is not quite as good as ASEBP, but it's pretty great. And then you have this pension. This pension is fabulous. It is so well managed. So well managed that we had that big fight with the Alberta government when they tried to take it over. All right. And there is a workshop that you must do before you retire, put on by the Alberta Teachers Association. And it's called the Pre-Retirement Workshop. Now, I have some documents that you can access. Well, a document, sorry. I have a document that you can access. Let me just find it on my desktop here. And this document is called the Joyful Retirement Worksheet, and it's available on your website, but I am also going to put it in the chat, and then I can see if anybody's chatting. Yeah, I love I love that you're comfortable in your own home. I hope most of you are probably in your own home. So I'm just going to put in a document that you already may have downloaded, that you already have access to, called Joyful Retirement Worksheet. And the way it works in the chat box is you open up the chat box and you click twice on that logo that you're seeing in the chat box. Now, if you don't have Word, that's okay, because Google will translate Word. Google Docs will translate Word. Also, I have it in PDF, but I didn't want to give you PDF because it's a worksheet. You're supposed to take notes. So you can either print it out and take notes, old school, or you can do new school and just type some notes in. For sure, I'm going to give you a little bit of chance during the workshop to type some notes in. And then also you'll want to look at this afterwards. So I'll go through things pretty quickly, and then we'll have some questions, and you'll want to use this as kind of a worksheet until you retire, as far as I'm concerned. So, all right, what are these simple practices? Well, it's manage your money effectively, obviously, right? You've got to figure that out. It's have some goals. Don't just say, I'm going to relax, that's it. No, you've got to figure out what your goals are. You've got to take care of yourself. We all need to take care of ourselves. And you'd think, oh, retirement, that's easy. I'll be able to take care of myself. Well, I got fat after I retired. Not fat, but I gained weight, and there's all kinds of there was all kinds of emotional things going on. I hadn't had anxiety for most of my career. Guess what? I had anxiety right as I retired. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that. You'll want to connect with significant others. This is an important part of life and an important part of retirement. And it's what makes retirement so wonderful, is that you have time. So you'll want to continue to improve and grow. You'll want to give back, or give generously, or be generous. And then I suggest preparing now. Good for you for being here today. Oh, there is no link, I'm hearing. That's interesting. I didn't ask Carly about the link. Let me just try it one more time because I could see the link. Oh, good. Several people see the link. Oh, what happened there? I was just probably see it 4 times.
Sorry, Dan, what are you looking for? What can I get you?
So they have access to a document that I put on the website in Sked, if that's how you say it. But I've also put it in the chat box, and somebody was saying they couldn't see it in the chat box, but then everybody else is saying, no, it's there. So,
Okay.
so it's in the chat box. Thanks, Carly.
Okay. Let me know if we need to put it up there again. No problem.
Thank you. All right. So here are the 7 practices. Great. Any questions? No. Let me take you through the 7 practices. Okay. First of all, managing your money. You are richer than you think. You've heard that before, right? From Scotiabank, but you really are. You really are. A lot of people worry so much about money, but let me share with you some of the ways that you are richer than you think. You go to these financial planners and they say, well, what do you live on right now? And you say, well, 10,000 a month or whatever it is, right? Okay, well, to get 10,000 a month, you must have saved $5 million, and that you're like, well, I have a pension. All right, well, $2 million, right? And so that's what the financial planner has to say. And that's what the calculators say too. But here's what they're missing. They're missing a few things. Your cost of living goes down, and they usually base it on your gross. Well, guess what? Your net versus your gross goes way up compared to your gross. Why? Well, you're not paying ATA dues, you're not paying a piece of different things, right? And so you're not paying as much taxes, you're not paying as much CPP, and on and on and on. And so your expenses go down, your deductions go down, and a lot of the financial planners and retirement calculators, they base it on before tax, like your income that you're living on before taxes. Now you still have to pay taxes on your income and on your pension, but it's so much lower. And here's what I did. I'm like, well, I got to get out of debt. I think that's another one. Hey, whoa, there we go. So you're out of debt. Wow, you've got a ton of money. So when you're living your life, you're in debt. You've got your car payment, your house payment, and who knows what else, right? And so you have all this debt. Well, I got out of debt. I got out of debt 5 years before I retired. And then I took my mortgage payment, which was $1,000 a month, and I just put it away for retirement. Guess what? That money's still there. Like, it really, everybody I know has said, I have more disposable income in retirement than I ever had ever. Okay. Now you do need to get out of debt, and you do need to like be prepared to cut back on your expenses. And you can still be in debt. I have friends who are still in debt, but wow, it is so great to be out of debt. You don't have the car payment, you don't have the mortgage payment. We needed a car this year, and guess what? I bought it cash, no debt, just cash money, because I'd had all this savings. Yeah, I'll talk about that. So this is my experience. My anecdotal thing is that you're working on savings, you buy RRSPs. I did too, but what did I have? I had about an annual salary in the bank. About $100,000 is what I had. So I had my annual salary in the bank, and I'm thinking, can I retire on my annual salary? And then I thought, well, if I can live off my pension, then that annual salary can be emergency money, right? So can I live on my pension? Well, how do you answer that question? Try it. That's what I did. So I plan to retire in June, and in October, you can't try it in September. Don't try September, but October, November, and even I think through Christmas, I tried to live on a little less. I tried to take care of some kind of dumb expenses that were coming off my credit card, and tried to cut back on some of these monthly expenses. And then I was able to live on my pension. That totally changed my mindset. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. And you make all your large purchases before you retire and you pay them off, right? Your house, your car, your whatever it is that's going to be big, your lake property, whatever it is. So that your expenses come down. And that comes back to point number one. The financial planners and the retirement calculators are saying, how much do you live on? Well, I live on this much. Well, let's take away a high cost of living. Let's take away deductions. Well, part of that high cost of living is your debt payments, right? And so, wow, it's incredible. And you can take Canada Pension Plan at 60, which I planned to do when I retired at 56, and then I turned 60 and I'm like, why? I don't need it. I mean, it's early, and so it's a little less, but I was thinking, well, I want to live life to the fullest kind of idea. And so I was going to take it at 60, but I'm 61 now, and I've been retired 5.5 years, and I don't have a need for it. But 65, I'll probably take it. And we can't have old age security until 65. You can postpone both of those till age 70, but no longer, like, do not postpone any longer than age 70. So if you're 70, I would, well, you should be getting these if you're 70. Even if you're working, you should be getting these if you're 70. All right. I've mentioned decreasing your monthly costs, and I even bought a hybrid car so that my gas consumption would be less. At the same time, I haven't, well, gas prices have gone up significantly the last couple of months, you know that, but I haven't really found that, I haven't had any problem with my monthly living expenses. Now, of course, you do need money for unexpected expenses. And so consider that. For me, it was an annual equal to my annual income, but I think it can be a little less, and for sure you can have more. And it can be a little less if you plan to work, right? So, all right. That's my thoughts on money. I talked about the trial run that I did of living on my pension. And also, at that same time, I kept receipts of every expense I had so that I knew where my money was going and I knew exactly what we were spending it on. I couldn't believe we spent $400 on eating out. I was like, how did we do that? Anyway, okay. So that's all I have about money. And you may have questions about a lot of the points I'm going to make today. I will have time for questions after I go through a few things. So we have retirement goals. These are things to consider. And you'll see on your worksheet, there's a few goals. Here was my goal. I just wanted to be happy and have fun. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a good time. That's going to be my goal. Well, I also thought the best way to be happy and have fun is to travel. I know a lot of you plan to travel. So those were kind of my only goals. I was like, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to travel. Work. Here's what happened. I had a friend, well, a colleague in the staff room say to me, yes, for every year you work, you get about 2% of your annual income in pension. I'm like adding it up. Okay, so if I retire after 30 years, I get 60%. I'm like, I think I could live on 60% if I, got rid of my house and car payments. I think I could live on 60% of my income, right? And so, but you know what? I love change and I love new adventures. So I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to work. I'm going to retire at 55 and I'm going to work. So for 15 years, so that comment came 15 years before I was 55. So at age 40, I was thinking about retirement and I started planning on it at age 40. So I started writing down jobs I would be interested in doing. And I had this big plan to work. So here's what the part we're talking about. I was going to move from teaching to a second act to a second career. I had all these ideas. By the time I retired 15 years later, what I did is on my phone, I would write in notes anytime I got an idea for a job I would do when I retired. I had 72 jobs, 72 different ideas. Now, supply teaching, right? Supply teaching or subbing, like that's the number one thing that we all can do. That was on the list, but I had 71 others. Now, granted, they weren't all stellar jobs, one was toilet salesman. Like I found this toilet that was fantastic. And I thought to myself, you know what? Hotels could save a lot of money if they all use this great toilet. I'll go to hotels and sell toilets. Anyway, that's just one of many. I have a brother-in-law who owns a sheet metal furnace installation business. And another thought was, hey, he's always wanted me to work for him. I could work for him, I could 72 ideas. But then when I did that trial run, I'm like, I don't have to work. I can live on my pension. I think I'm good. And so I did not plan on working. I planned on having fun and traveling. Now, do you want to move? Do you want to downsize or even move to, some of my colleagues have moved to warm places. I have a colleague who started planning 15 years before and bought a place in Victoria and lives on Vancouver Island now. So there's all kinds of goals that way. There's goals of having time with family, which I did not have a goal to do. I just thought, well, that'll come naturally. And I found out later, you kind of need some goals. Hobbies and interests. Well, I have several hobbies and interests, and I just didn't plan. I just didn't have any goals around anything there. So I did not do a very good job having goals in anything but having fun and traveling, right? So I retired, and guess what? Let me tell you, that first year I traveled, I went on 15 major trips, 15. Let me take you through the major trips. I mentioned going to Lake Louise in September. I also went to the Okanagan about 4 times. I went to the Okanagan. I went to Jasper, of course. I went to Hawaii. So we'd planned a big cruise. Of all the vacations I'm going to show you, this is the one I recommend the most. Go on a cruise because you don't have to worry about anything. It was a 15-day cruise out of Vancouver. So it's 5 days on the sea. And you're like, oh, I don't know if I could spend 5 days in the boat. And I thought the same thing, but guess what? It was fabulous. Anyway, if you've ever cruised, and if you haven't cruised, try it. It's like crack cocaine or whatever, like you try it once and you just can't resist it. Anyway, so that's kind of my favorite, biggest trip. That was my big retirement trip to, take this 15-day cruise to Hawaii. But I also went to San Diego, and wow, was that ever fantastic. And then as part of San Diego, we went up to Disneyland, right? And then, it's winter time. And so I go to Panorama and Kicking Horse, and I ski with my sons. These are my 3 sons that I'm skiing with. And by the way, if you don't know Panorama and Kicking Horse, Panorama is near Radium and Invermere and Fairmont. So it's right near those 3 places. And so I visited all 3 of those places. And then I spent time in all 3 of those places. And I also spent time, Kicking Horse is in Golden. And so we made the commute. It's about an hour north of Panorama to Golden, that's where Kicking Horse is. All right. Guess what? We had an all-inclusive. We'd never been on an all-inclusive. And so, hey, there's this really inexpensive all-inclusive. So in January, we did an all-inclusive in Cuba. More Lake Louise and Banff in the spring. And then my son and I went to Jamaica. 10 days in Jamaica, visited every single parish in Jamaica. In other words, we went around the entire island, 13 parishes. Whoopsie. Okay. Wasn't that amazing? I just loved all those trips. They were fantastic. amazing trips. However, I found I was really happy on the trips. I was really happy preparing. And then they were over. And I'm like, what's next? What do I do now? What's next? And you can tell I went on a ton of trips, 15 different trips, but I found this to be true. I found that this happiness was fabulous. It was this ecstasy almost when I'm, in Hawaii, when I'm in Cuba, when I'm in Jamaica, this ecstasy. And then I come down off of it and everybody says, oh, you have these wonderful memories. Well, no, I was kind of bored. I was kind of like unfulfilled, basically. And I found these stages to be accurate for me. Now, I hope it's not accurate for you, but it's like, woohoo, I'm retired. This is awesome. And it even says woohoo in the slide. I just love this. And then I'm like, now what? I went to Hawaii. Let's go to Cuba. Okay, we go to Cuba. Okay, let's go to Jamaica. Okay, we go to Jamaica. Why am I not happy? Like, yes, I'm happy in Jamaica and I'm happy in Cuba and I'm happy in Hawaii. Don't get me wrong, it was fantastic. But where's this long-term happiness going to come from? So I think you know the answer, don't you? Why didn't it last? And I got to thinking about this. Why were these trips, this travel so exhilarating, absolutely exhilarating? And then it was over. I'm like, I want, let me answer the question with what happened to me. I was thinking about these first two questions, why didn't the happiness last? And how do I be happy and fulfilled? And I started thinking about what I taught teachers a lot of my career as a consultant, but also as a teacher, and what I taught students all of my career. And I taught them that I heard Martin Brokenleg and Larry Bentro speak, and I attended sessions with them. And I was totally sold on the Circle of Courage. And I started teaching the Circle of Courage to my students, first of all. And then I found it really, really helped students who are struggling and really helped students that were unhappy, really. Now, all of a sudden, I had this epiphany. I thought to myself, after this first year of highs and lows, kind of like a roller coaster ride, I thought to myself, what about applying these things I've been teaching my students to myself? And so I started doing this for myself. I started looking at this independence piece, this belonging piece, this generosity piece, and this mastery piece. And I know this came from Indigenous culture and Indigenous wisdom, but in one of the sessions, Martin Brokenleg says, this stuff is based on hundreds of years of research. I'm like, well, where's the research? So I started looking for the research, and guess what? I found that there were two types of happiness. I started doing the research. I found out there was this hedonic, pleasurable happiness that we get when we go on an amusement ride or go to a movie or eat some great meal, right? We eat this great meal and it's wonderful, and then it's over, right? We have this tremendous fun time. For me, you saw me wake surfing in a picture, wake surfing. We have this tremendous fun time and then it's over. It's exciting. It's exhilarating, as I mentioned. It even can provide a lot of purpose. For me, the purpose was planning these trips, the travel, planning the travel was very purposeful, but I found it temporary. And so as I looked at the research, there's a new term that it's not new, it's Greek. It's eudaimonic or eudaimonia, but it was new to me. I'd never heard of it. Have you ever heard of eudaimonia? I'd never heard of eudaimonia. and eudaimonia is different. It's the same language as hedonic. Hedonic comes from the Greek. Eudaimonic comes from the Greek. Well, eudaimonic refers to an inner peace and joy, an inner kind of happiness, a happiness that comes from joy and fulfillment. And it's getting really big in positive psychology. Positive psychology is a pretty new psychology. It's 20 years old. Well, 21 years old. Anyway, but the positive psychology is all about wellness and well-being, and what we need to really take it a step further, not just be okay, but to be super fulfilled and joyful and engaged. And this kind of happiness is an enduring happiness, and it comes from the inside, and it provides meaning. Well, it comes from meaning, actually. So as teachers, you have meaning in your life. When you retire, that meaning goes away, unless you hold on to some of the things that you had when you were a teacher. Well, what are those things? I found Stanley Coopersmith said it the best. So I'm looking at all this research. Here's what Stanley Coopersmith says this eudaimonia comes from. It comes from being in control. By the way, this is the greatest part of retirement, is being in control. You are in control. And guess what? You can supply teach or substitute teach, and you're still in control. You can say yes or no. Some of you may even find that lifestyle right now where you enjoy just substitute teaching or supply teaching. He says that you have to be significant to others. And I would turn that around and say that others need to be significant to you as well. And then improvement and accomplishment and doing something with our lives. As teachers, we're always improving and getting better and trying new strategies with our students. And we always get a new class to try things with, and we're always improving. And I realized that these four things are almost identical to what Martin Brokenleg was teaching. They're almost identical to another guy I found, DC and Ryan, well, two guys, I guess, another two guys who have this theory called self-determination theory that's only a few years old, this self-determination theory, part of positive psychology again. And he says in order to have wellness and to be motivated, you have to have autonomy, you have to have relatedness with people, you have to feel you're competent. And only in the last couple of years did he add beneficence. Isn't that interesting? So he was missing beneficence for about 10 years, I guess. I think it started about, well, no, I think 2008. So, about 14 years. And then just the last 2 or 3 years, he added beneficence. They added beneficence. So DC and Ryan is another great piece of research to look at. But they're all saying the same things, aren't they? And so I've kind of translated the autonomy piece into caring for yourself, because you really don't have power in your life unless you're taking care of yourself, right? And then I've translated the relatedness and belonging into connecting. I've translated the mastery into some sort of growth in our life. And I've translated generosity and beneficence. But, Coopersmith says it well. You have to feel like you're a good person. That's what Coopersmith says. And so when do you feel like you're a good person? How did I get my students to feel like they were a good person? Just by having them be generous, having them give, right? So caring for self, connecting, growing, and giving, and this is how it relates to Stanley Coopersmith's theory. You'll notice that we've got to take care of ourselves, and we've got to feel like we are engaged in some sort of growth. But then this connecting is others, and this giving is others. And it can be related, and people can say, oh, well, that's the same thing. I would say no. I would say the connecting is with significant people who are significant to you, and giving is people who you want to help. And so sometimes you have very little connection with those people that you are helping. But I learned that purpose and fun, which was my first year of retirement, I had a lot of fun. They're not the same as meaning and fulfillment that I got from teaching. So you are very blessed to be a teacher. You're getting all of this, you do stuff that matters. And when you retire, you've got to find stuff that matters. Well, no, you don't. Some people don't. They just sit around. But I found I had to find stuff that matters. And especially as teachers, where we're used to doing so much that matters. And so I found these 4 things of caring, connecting, giving, and caring for yourself, actually. Um, Otherwise, it's the same as giving, but caring, connecting, giving, and growing, it equals fulfillment and meaning. Like it just brings fulfillment. And guess what? You can do this every single week. You already do it every single week. As a matter of fact, I'll have you think about that. Well, this looks almost like a formula. Well, let's see. C squared, caring and connecting, G squared, giving and growing, equals fulfillment and meaning. This is just for those of you who are math teachers. No, actually, those of you who love math are looking at this. My wife looked at this. She goes, "That's not a formula." So anyway, we'll move on, since that really isn't a formula. But guess what? It's a great mnemonic device, isn't it? CG squared equals FM. Caring, connecting, giving, and growing equals fulfillment and meaning. That's my mnemonic device, and I'm sticking to it. All right, putting these principles into action. I'm just going to take you through each of the principles really quickly and tell you what I did and what you might consider. This is all on your worksheet. Oh, just a minute. No, let's have you think about this. I'm going to time you for 60 seconds only to think about what you have done in each of these areas just this week. In the last week, what have you done? You've done something in every area. Think about it. Go ahead. 60 seconds.
I did all my shoveling. It's a convention, so I'm at home for 2 days. Yeah, it's nice. I don't even have to be on the roads. Yeah.
I'll mute him. I'll figure it out somehow. There's 124 of you. So all right. I think he muted himself because I can't figure out how to find him.
No, it's okay, Dan. I took care of it. So.
Oh, thanks, Carly.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. All right. 30 more seconds. Think about what you've done in each of these areas in the last week. All right. So you can see you do this already. And all I'm saying is that now that you're aware of these 4 areas, that you can keep doing it into retirement. You can find ways to do it. And I'll share with you some of the ways that I do. But let me tell you, caring for, I'll just go through my week this last week. Caring for self, I started eating a little better this last week, more salads. Growing, I read about resilience this last week. Connecting, I had a significant connection. Last Saturday, I skied with my grandson and daughter and taught my grandson how to ski. And then the giving piece, I have a neighbor who just is getting a hip replacement, and I shoveled her driveway twice. All right, so there you go. We all do stuff like that, don't we? Now, what will you do to care for yourself? And there's so much to consider. Here's what I love. This is a wonderful model by Roger Walsh, part of positive psychology. And he has done research on each of these 8 areas. And he says, here's the 8 things you need to be happy. And for me, I kind of translate these as taking good care of yourself. So exercise, nutrition. Now the relaxation and the recreation, that's what you can look forward to in retirement. There's lots of time for that. I decided when I started thinking about what I would do, I decided to go for a walk every morning in nature. So I go for a walk every morning in nature, and I think and pray and meditate while I walk. I find that I can do that better if I walk. And that helps my spirituality a lot. Now, the giving back in relationships, those are the other two things, right? And so I just love this model. I highly recommend evaluating yourself on it. Okay, practice number 4 is connecting with significant others. Let me tell you what I did once I thought about it. Once this was in a place in my brain where I realized I needed connecting, I decided to spend after school every Monday with one of my grandchildren. So at the time I had 4 grandchildren when I first retired. Well, maybe five, but one was a baby. So I had 5 grandchildren. Now I have, how many do I have? 7 grandchildren. I now have 7 grandchildren. Anyway, so every Monday, I would spend time with one of my grandchildren. And then, of course, every Friday, I would take my wife out to do something fun. So a date night was always Friday night. Monday night was always grandchild night. And sometimes there'll be problems with those that we care about. And I love this quote: never let a problem to be solved become more important than a person to be loved. All right. And then practice number 5, basically growing, in continuing to improve yourself. And there's so many ways to do this, isn't there? Right? I mean, we can grow in knowledge, we can grow in skills, we can develop new talents, even character traits that we wish we had better character traits. We can work on specific character traits. When I was thinking about this and thinking, well, what am I going to do? I thought, I want to teach people what I just learned. I want to teach people about resilience and joy and happiness. And so I started researching resilience, joy, and happiness. And I still am. And I love the topic. And I have all of these sessions on resilience and joy and happiness that I do. Shawn Achor, I highly recommend. He has a wonderful, wonderful TED Talk on happiness. And he wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage. He's a fabulous person to get to know if you don't know him already. He says happiness inspires productivity. And that's kind of his whole shtick, is that, hey, let's be happy first, and then we're going to be more productive. Well, the research, and he supports that in research. He was a Harvard professor. But the research also says the reverse is true. It says that when we're productive, we're happy. And that's why, and you should be happy now. As a teacher, you should be like, hey, I'm productive. I am happy. Now, practice number 6, this generosity piece. I went to my principal and I said, this was, after I'd retired. You remember that class I used to teach Monday afternoons where all the classes, 3 classes would come together and I'd teach them that stuff? And the principal said, yeah. I said, well, I want to do that again. And he's like, well, I can't pay you. And, we don't need a sub every Monday afternoon to do that. And I said, that's okay. That's fine. I just loved doing that. Can I please keep doing it for free? Really? You want to do it for free? Well, I think there's some forms you have to sign, like some volunteer forms. Anyway, so I signed the volunteer forms, and every Monday afternoon I would go in, they would bring these 3 classes together, and I would kind of do group work with them, and I'd put them at tables, and I'd teach them all kinds of relationship skills and teamwork skills, and help them to learn to get along with new people. And it was fabulous. I did it for 3 years every Monday. And unfortunately, I got another another gig, and so I had to start doing that. But that was what I decided very consciously. So when these four things came to my conscious, and starting from Martin Brokenleg's Circle of Courage, when they came to my conscious, and I started doing them weekly and evaluating myself. Well, what did I do this week? I was happy. I was really, really happy. And I was so happy because I was retired and I could do what I want. And I was doing what I wanted. All right. I love this line from Dan in Real Life. If you haven't seen Dan in Real Life, you have to watch it. It is so good. And the picture is where she says, "You murderer of love," she says to her father, right? Anyway, her boyfriend tells Dan, love is more than a feeling. Love, it's an ability, he says to Dan. And that's her boyfriend that, whose love her dad murdered. Anyway, so I just think that's so true. I mean, it's one thing to have a feeling, but there's the doing part, right? Now, practice number 7, prepare now. I should have put now in there. I'll adjust that for any other sessions I do. Prepare now for your retirement. I mean, I was preparing 15 years in advance, and I'm glad I was. If you're 30 years out of retirement, prepare. By the way, I retired after 30 years of service with Edmonton Public Schools. So I have a decent pension because, 56 plus the 30 years was that magical number of 85, right? So, okay. So how do you prepare? Well, everything I've talked about, that's how you prepare. All right. All of this stuff. Time for questions. That's what I have to share with you. What do you, why don't we do it this way? Why don't you, because there's 125 of you, go ahead and write your questions in the chat box. And I apologize if I don't get to all of them, but I'll have a look at it. Yeah, so Lorna made a comment that, yes, she's done, and Lorna, you totally make my point. Okay, so thank you, Lorna, for your comment, because it totally makes my point. What's my point? My point is that when you retire, these 4 things kind of go away. I found anyway. And so I had to consciously work on them to get them back into my life. So thank you, Lorna. That was a perfect comment. Any other questions? $85, Mark, do it. Pull the trigger. Do it, do it, do it. It is fabulous. It is so good. Oh yeah, I'm happy. I am so happy. And I haven't even shared with you some of my happiest things. I hope you ask questions about them. All right. Yeah. So we're all good at summers, right? We can all do summers, but when it's an endless summer, I just thought it would be an endless summer. And when it's an endless summer, it just gets old. Like, it's just kind of like, where's my meaning? Where's my purpose? So I'm looking at this, did you struggle at first to fill your days? Yeah. After I was back from my trips, I'd come back from my trips and I'd be like, now what? Okay, Cuba, let's do Cuba, like Banff, Jasper. I went to Banff and Jasper and Lake Louise. Oh, how many times? Really, honestly, like that first year of retirement, I went 5 times. Now I'm down to 2 or 3 times a year. So, no, I mean like each 5 times, like Banff 5 times, Jasper 5 times, right? So, okay. I had relatives who were financial planners who I talked to. And so some of the stuff I gave you came from my, actually my son-in-law and my father, right? And they are both, they both were financial planners. And so that I kind of took you through the process that they took me through that I found really not useful, but No, you don't get me wrong. Financial planners are invaluable. What do you do with your savings? How do you invest it? And how do you optimize your taking out RSPs? Like if you're ever going to take them out, how do you do that? And oh yeah, like I actually went to an accountant to help me with my RSPs to and I do have Edward Jones. I have all my investments with Edward Jones, well, and some with TD, but the investment part is I don't have to worry about. I let other people worry about. And I like mutual funds because I don't have to worry about. So Brian's had a few curveballs. Brian, so I have some friends who had some curveballs thrown at them, and they'd only taught for like 8 years, and they are like, how am I ever going to retire? And, you know, things like that. And what these friends did is reinvented themselves and actually stopped teaching. Well, no, two of them started supply teaching. Okay. Two of them started supply teaching, and one of them went to a whole new career totally. I highly recommend, Brian, that instead of retiring, because you know you've had these curveballs, financial curveballs, whatever they might be, instead of retiring, try reinventing yourself to something that gives you a little more autonomy, something that gives you a retirement-like autonomy. Let me tell you, I am not retired. I'm teaching you right now. Guess what? I have 22 sessions at 8 teachers conventions. Okay, so is that retired? No. I also teach for Concordia University Tuesdays and Thursdays, every Tuesday, Thursday. As a matter of fact, I gave them asynchronous stuff today so that I didn't have to teach them today. Anyway, the point is that I'm working, but I get to choose. Let me tell you a story. All of you got to hear this story. I'm filling my life with stuff, these sessions and teaching university mostly. So the dean came to me and he said, hey, we have this course that we'd really like you to teach. It's teaching teachers how to plan. And you know, we'd like you to teach it this September. I said, well, I'm already doing those other 3 courses. And he says, well, yeah, but those 3 courses are Tuesday, Thursday. This would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm like, no. First of all, I hate planning. No. Anyway, so I said to him, I said, no, I'll do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or I'll do the Tuesday, Thursday. I'll do the one set of courses or the other. I won't do both. I had my pension. I didn't have to like do both. And so I don't know, Brian, if that's too long an answer, but I say, you know, take what, if you want to retire, find something that feels like retirement, you know, become a math teacher. That feels like retirement. I'm a secondary math teacher. I always gave or you know what? A band leader, all they do is they wave their arm. That's like retirement. I'm teasing, okay? I'm teasing. I know some of you are band leaders and some of you are mathematicians and you're all offended, but I'm just teasing. Okay. What would I do differently if I went back? I would do these 4 things right away. As a matter of fact, this whole session is what I would do differently if I went back. I'm giving you everything that I wish I had known. So these 7 practices, do it. Really, like look at this worksheet, figure it all out, get some goals for yourself, etc. Just reading some questions. Yeah, I'm glad, Karen, you like that idea of September. You've got it. And you know what? It wasn't just Lake Louise, the beginning of September. I left on the Hawaiian cruise at the end of September. And so that, oh yeah, you got to do that. It's fabulous. So Clayton, 34, you know, hang in there, buddy. You can retire. And you can retire whenever you feel like you need to move on to another kind of work. But if you want to retire on your pension, you're going to have to get out of debt and do all the things I've talked about, right? Get out of debt. And if you want to retire on your pension, you'll have to figure out what you need to live on, kind of idea, right? But I had a friend who actually retired after, I think it was like 18 years, 20 years at the very most. He had a very small pension and he just totally reduced his cost of living. He lived actually out in the boonies. So, all right. Double dip. What is that? How did it affect my tax bracket? Okay, so Lorna, I absolutely double dip every month. I double dip. Why do I double dip? Well, I get paid for doing this session with you. It's not much, but I do get that money. I get paid for teaching at Concordia University, and I get my pension. So I'm triple dipping, right? You know, if that's what you mean, I can quadruple dip if I take my CPP. All right, but guess what? All of it, CPP, university, teaching you, pension, I have to pay taxes on it, right?
So what I'm referring to is, when did you retire at the end of January? Then get a temporary.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
How does that affect your tax bracket? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had lots of colleagues do that because it was a big deal with Edmonton Public for a while. No, I can't share any experience with that, but for sure your taxes are going to be way higher if you do that. I find taxes, yeah, it's really nice to be able to live on your pension, and then taxes are a little bit lower, but you still have to pay them. But if you're doing that kind of double dip, which I wish I'd had that opportunity, I would have taken it if I'd had that opportunity to, you know, to actually take my retirement and teach at the same time. Yes, taxes are a consideration, especially if you're going to take your pension and you're going to work. All right, what's next? Thanks for that question, Lorna. Thanks for clarifying it. All right. Here's the great thing about being in control. This is Karen, going off of your comment, Karen, about loving control. That's right now, you know, you have this class to teach and you have this time that you have to start, and you have very little control, even who you teach sometimes, right? Me, I went back to teaching as a volunteer, but guess what? I totally had control. I loved it. Yeah, no, I did not have it figured out before I retired. So the question about, you know, what do you wish you had known? I wish I'd prepared. I felt like I had prepared, but I hadn't expected some of the things that came along that I've now shared with you so that you can expect them. All right, everybody's saying thank you. So let me say thank you for coming. Don't forget these 4 things that really can bring fulfillment and meaning. And the best part about being a teacher is that it matters. And the worst part about being a teacher is that it matters. Right? But you know, the joy we feel has little to do with these external circumstances, and even terrible circumstances. Like I had great circumstances, but even it really has to do with our focus. And if you will focus on those 4 things, I promise you that you will be joyful. Thanks, everybody.